The market was alive with cruel voices, heavy chains rattled, strange lights flickered, and the smell of fear was everywhere. On a raised platform stood cages, and inside them were beings of many kinds, tired, hungry, and broken. Merchants shouted prices, buyers whispered, guards laughed with cold eyes. This was no place for hope. This was the auction of despair. Among the cages, one figure stood out. A thin alien mother held her small child close to her chest. Her skin was pale and cracked. Her eyes were tired but still burning with a weak fire. She wrapped her arms around her child as if her own body was the last shield she could give. The child was small, fragile, and hungry. His stomach made soft noises, but no food came. The mother whispered gently, "Just a little longer, my child." But her heart knew the truth. She had sold herself, not for gold, not for power, but for one thing, food for her child. She had walked into this market, offered herself, and begged the merchants to take her. They laughed, they mocked, but finally they agreed. Her price was small, almost worthless. The child was allowed to live for now, but only if someone bought her. If no one did, she would be cast out and the child left to die. The merchants called a rare alien mother, strong enough to work, gentle enough to obey, who will bid. But the crowd did not care. To them, she was just another face, another body in chains. No one wanted a mother with a child. It was trouble. It was weakness. The bidding floor grew quiet and silence was louder than any noise. The mother's arms tightened around her child and she closed her eyes. Perhaps this was the end. Then, from the back of the market, a single figure moved forward, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark coat. His steps were heavy, his face hidden in shadow. The crowd whispered, "A human." Humans were rare here, and most feared them for their wars and strange strength. The man looked at the mother, then at the child. His eyes were sharp but unreadable. The merchant grinned and shouted, "A human buyer! Surely this will raise the price." But the man raised only one finger. "1 coin," he said, his voice low and steady. The merchant laughed. "1 coin? That is nothing. She is not even worth the chains around her wrists." The man did not smile, did not blink. "1 coin," he repeated. The market fell silent again. No one dared to challenge a human. The merchant's grin faded and his greed fought his fear. At last he nodded. "Fine. 1 coin. She is yours. Take her." The cage door creaked open. The mother held her child tighter, waiting for the blow, waiting for the order, waiting for pain. But the man did not raise his hand. He did not put chains on her neck. Instead, he bent down, his voice calm but strong. "You are safe now," he said. The mother's eyes widened. Her mind refused to believe. Safe? There was no safe in this galaxy. Every master was cruel. Every buyer wanted only one thing, control. She stared at the human, waiting for his true face to show, but he only turned and walked away. "Come," he said without looking back. Her legs shook, her child whimpered, but she followed because there was nothing else to do. The crowd stared in silence, some with pity, some with confusion, and many with anger. How could a human waste his coin on nothing? Whispers filled the air. "He is mad," someone hissed. "No, he is dangerous," another said. The merchants laughed nervously, but their eyes followed the human's back until he vanished into the streets. The mother walked behind him, her heart racing. Every step she expected betrayal. Every corner she thought he would turn and reveal chains, but nothing came. Her child fell asleep against her chest, his small face peaceful for the first time in days. The mother touched his hair and whispered, "Stay strong, little one." Inside her chest, a question grew. Why would a human buy her if not for use? What game was this? What secret did he hide? The city lights flickered above them, and the night grew colder. The human led them away from the noise of the market, away from the auction of despair. Each step carried them into the unknown. But for the first time, unknown did not feel like death. It felt like a door to something she had never known. Hope. And yet, in the shadows of the market, merchants whispered to each other. The alien mother was not as worthless as she looked. Her child carried a secret bloodline, a value greater than any coin. They had let her slip away, but the hunt would begin soon, very soon. The mother did not know it yet. The human did not speak of it, but both of their lives had changed forever in that single moment. The auction of despair was only the beginning. The mother expected chains. She expected commands, harsh words, and the sound of a whip. Every step behind the human felt heavy, like walking into a trap. Her child slept in her arms, his small face calm, but her heart was a storm. The human led them through narrow streets. The market noise faded behind them, replaced by silence and the hum of broken lights. Shadows moved on the walls, and strange creatures watched from corners, but no one dared to block the human's path. His presence was enough to keep the dark away. The mother followed because she had no choice. She followed because her child needed her alive. They reached a building at the edge of the city. Old metal doors groaned as the human pushed them open. Inside was not a cage, not a cell, but a small home. The air smelled of oil and dust, yet it was warm. The mother froze at the doorway. She had never seen a buyer bring someone here without chains. This could not be real. The human turned, his eyes calm but unreadable. "You may enter," he said. His voice carried no cruelty, only weight. The mother stepped inside slowly, her arms tightening around the child. She scanned the walls for hidden locks, searched the floor for traps, but saw none. There was a table, a broken chair, a small bed in the corner. On the table sat bread, simple and rough, and a jug of water. The smell made the child stir, his eyes opening wide. He reached for the bread with weak hands. The mother pulled him back at first, afraid of poison. But the human broke the bread in half, ate one piece himself, and placed the other gently in front of the child. "Eat," he said. The boy hesitated, then bit the bread. Tears filled the mother's eyes as she watched him chew hungrily. For days she had begged for crumbs. For days she had held her child while his stomach cried. And now, a stranger fed him without asking anything in return. Her hands shook as she touched the bread. Her lips whispered, "Why?" But no answer came. The human poured water into a cup and gave it to her. His movements were slow, careful, as if he did not want to frighten her. She drank, the taste plain but clean, and felt life return to her dry throat. Her heart beat faster, torn between gratitude and fear. What kind of buyer showed kindness? What kind of human bought without chains? That night the human sat near the door, silent, guarding. The mother lay on the bed with her child, her body tense, her eyes half open. Sleep came like an enemy, striking without warning. She dreamed of the market, of laughter, of chains, and woke in terror. But each time, the human was still there, awake, watching the door, never moving toward her. By morning, she expected commands, but none came. Instead, the human placed food again, then left the house. The door stayed unlocked. She stared at it for a long time. Freedom waited outside, but danger too. If she ran, the merchants would find her, the hunters would catch her, and her child would be torn away. She stayed, though every bone in her body screamed. To flee, days passed. The pattern was the same. The human brought food, sometimes clothes, sometimes firewood. He never raised his voice, never lifted his hand against her. He spoke little, but his silence was not sharp, it was steady. The child grew stronger, his laughter returning, and with every smile of her child, the mother's suspicion grew heavier. One evening, as the sun bled red through the broken window, the mother finally spoke. Her voice was soft, broken, yet firm. "Why did you buy me?" she asked. The human paused, his hand resting on the table. He did not look at her, only at the fading light. "You needed to be bought," he answered. The words were strange, simple, but they carried something she could not understand. She wanted to press further, to demand the truth, but fear held her back. That night she whispered to her child, "No one is this kind, not in this galaxy." Her child smiled in his sleep, his small hand holding hers. The mother's eyes filled with tears. Her heart wanted to believe, but her mind refused. She had seen too much cruelty, too many lies. Kindness was only another mask, and one day it would fall. Yet deep inside, a small flame of doubt burned against her fear. What if he truly meant no harm? What if his silence was not a mask, but a shield for wounds she could not see? The thought frightened her more than chains, because if it was true, it meant she was not worthless. It meant someone saw her as more than a body for sale. It meant hope was real. And in the shadows outside the city, whispers spread. The merchants had learned of the human who bought the alien mother. They spoke of the child she carried, of blood that could bring wealth and power. The hunt had begun, though the mother did not yet know it. Her days of fragile peace were numbered. Her story with the human was only at its beginning. The night was quiet, too quiet. The alien moth. R sat awake on the small bed, her child sleeping in her arms. The house was dark, the air heavy, and only the faint hum of the city outside touched the silence. She should have been resting, but her heart would not let her. The human sat near the door, as always, guarding, silent, watching the shadows. For days he had been nothing but calm, but tonight something felt wrong. His breath was heavier, his shoulders tense, as if some storm lived inside him. The mother watched, afraid to speak, afraid to break the stillness. Then it came, a sound like a muffled cry. The human's head jerked, sweat shining on his skin, his fists clenched tight. He was dreaming, but not the dreams of peace. He was lost in nightmares. The mother held her child tighter, her eyes wide. The human's voice broke the silence, raw and harsh. "No, not again, not the children." His body twisted, his teeth ground together, and then he shouted, "Run!" The mother nearly leapt from the bed, fear flooding her chest. The child stirred but did not wake. The human gasped, his eyes snapping open, glowing faintly in the darkness. For one heartbeat, they were not human eyes at all. They burned with a strange light, like old fire trapped in glass. The mother froze, every instinct screaming that he was dangerous. The human sat up, breathing hard, his hands shaking. He looked around as if searching for enemies, but found only her gaze. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, crushing. Finally, the human turned away, pressing his hands to his face. "You should sleep," he said, his voice rough, but the mother could not. Her fear was greater than ever. She whispered, "What are you?" The words slipped from her lips before she could stop them. The human stayed quiet for a long time, then answered, "Someone who has seen too much." His tone was not cruel, not cold, only tired. The mother wanted to ask more, but her throat closed. She pulled her child closer, as if the boy could protect her from the man who had bought her. The human stood and stepped outside, leaving her in silence. The next day he returned with food again. His eyes were calm, his face unreadable, but she saw the weight behind them now. He ate little, spoke less, but his movements were careful, as if each action was chosen. The mother studied him, her mind full of questions. Why would a human with such strength, such shadows in his heart, waste his time on her? That night the dreams returned. This time she did not pretend to sleep. She watched as he trembled, whispered broken words. "Too late. They burned. I failed them all." Her chest ached as she listened. These were not the words of a cruel master, but of someone haunted by children he could not save. When he woke, his eyes caught hers. For the first time he did not look away. For the first time she saw past the silence. Scars marked his body, not on the skin but deeper, the scars of war. "I was a soldier," he said quietly, as if confessing to ghosts. "I fought in battles no one remembers. I walked through worlds that no longer exist." His voice shook, though his body stayed still. "I swore to protect the weak, but in the end, I protected no one." The mother's breath caught. Her fear did not vanish, but it shifted. This man was not simply a buyer, not simply a shadow. He was a broken weapon, one who had turned away from war, but could never escape it. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice stronger now. The human's eyes softened, though sorrow filled them. "Because I swore never to let another child starve," he said. The words cut deep, simple but heavy. The mother's heart ached, her suspicion fighting against the spark of hope. Was this truly kindness, or only guilt wearing another face? The child, half asleep, stirred and looked at the human. His small hand reached out, innocent and fearless. The human hesitated, then gently took the hand in his large, scarred fingers. The boy smiled, then fell back to sleep. The mother's eyes stung with tears she would not let fall. Outside, the city whispered of hunters, merchants who searched for the mother and child. They wanted the boy. They wanted the blood that carried value greater than gold. The human knew this, though he did not speak it. His eyes were always on the door, always on the shadows. He was not only guarding them, he was waiting for the storm he knew would come. The mother lay awake again, her heart divided. This man was no master, no ordinary buyer. He was something else, something dangerous, something broken. But in his brokenness, there was a promise that maybe, just maybe, she and her child could live. And as the night deepened, the human whispered words meant only for himself. "I could not save them before," he said, his voice cracking, "but I will not fail this time." The mother heard, though she did not answer. Her fear remained, but so did something new, a fragile seed of trust trembling in the dark. The city never slept. Its streets pulsed with neon lights, its alleys whispered with secrets, its skies burned with the hum of ships. But beneath the noise, beneath the glow, something darker moved. The words spread quietly, passed from mouth to mouth, from merchant to hunter, from shadow to shadow. The alien mother had been sold, and the child still lived. That child was not ordinary. In hidden taverns, traders leaned close, speaking in hushed voices. "They say the boy's blood carries power," one muttered. "Power to heal, power to command, power to sell for more than planets," another whispered. Eyes gleamed with greed, and contracts were written in silence. The hunters began to gather. Back in the old house at the city's edge, the mother felt the weight of invisible eyes. Each time she stepped outside, she sensed danger. Each time she heard footsteps, her heart raced. She held her child close. Her hands trembling. The human noticed, though she said nothing. His gaze was sharper now, scanning every corner, every shadow. He knew what she feared because he feared it too. At night, the mother dreamed of cages again, of merchants' laughter, of her child being torn away. She woke in terror, clutching him, and found the human still at the door, always awake, always silent. He said nothing, but his eyes told her he was waiting for something, not peace, but war. The whispers grew louder in the city. Hunters tracked every lead, merchants paid for every rumor. Some claimed to have seen the human carrying the mother. Others swore the child's glow had been noticed when he slept. Each tale pulled the noose tighter. It was only a matter of time. One evening the human returned late, his coat torn, his face grim. He placed food on the table, but the mother saw the mark of a fight on his arm. "Who did this?" she asked softly, her fear growing. The human did not answer. He only looked at her with heavy eyes. "Soon we must leave," he said, her breath caught, her chest tight. "Leave? Where?" "Anywhere the hunters cannot follow," he replied. The child played with a broken toy, smiling, unaware of the danger pressing closer. The mother stroked his hair, her heart breaking. Every moment of peace felt stolen, borrowed from fate. She wanted to believe the human could protect them, but the shadows outside whispered otherwise. The next day a stranger came, a merchant with a false smile, pretending to sell cloth, but the mother saw the way his eyes measured the child. She froze, pulling her son close. The human stepped forward, his voice sharp as steel. "Leave," he said. The merchant hesitated, then left, but not without glancing back. That glance told her everything. Someone had found them. That night, the human sat sharpening a blade. The mother watched, her hands shaking. "You knew they would come," she whispered. He nodded, not looking at her. "Yes." Her voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me?" His answer was quiet but strong. "Because fear would have eaten you alive." She wanted to shout, to curse him, but her child stirred in his sleep. Her anger became tears instead. She wiped them quickly, unwilling to show weakness, but the human saw, and his silence grew heavier. He was not her enemy, yet he carried truths like stones, too heavy to share. In the darkest hour of night, the knock came, slow, heavy, echoing through the small house. The mother's blood turned cold, her arms tightening around her child. The human stood, blade in hand, his eyes like steel. The knock came again, harder. The silence after it was worse than the sound itself. Shadows shifted outside the window, shapes moving with purpose. The hunt had found them. The mother's breath came fast, her heart pounding in her ears. She whispered, "They are here." The human gave a single nod, his body tense. He placed himself between the door and the bed, between danger and the fragile life he had chosen to protect. The child stirred, his small voice soft. "Mother?" She held him close, rocking him, whispering, "Stay quiet, my love, stay quiet." The knock turned into a crash. The door shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The human's blade caught the faint light, gleaming like a promise. He whispered without turning his head, "When it breaks, stay behind me." The mother's eyes filled with fear, but she nodded. There was no escape now, only survival. Outside, voices called, cruel and greedy. "Give us the boy and we will spare you." The mother's heart nearly stopped. She buried her face in her child's hair, whispering prayers. The human answered with a voice like thunder, "You will take nothing." The house grew silent again, the hunters waiting, the mother trembling, the child clutching her tightly. The human stood tall, scars and shadows burning in his eyes. He was no longer only a buyer, no longer only a man in silence. He was a soldier again, and the hunt was about to begin. The door shattered, wood and metal splintered as hunters stormed inside, their eyes wild with greed, their weapons glowing faint red. The mother screamed, clutching her child, pressing him tight against her chest. The human moved like a shadow, blade flashing, cutting through the first attacker before his foot touched the floor. Chaos filled the room. The hunters shouted, firing energy bolts. Sparks lit the walls. Smoke filled the air. The child cried, his small body shaking, but the mother did not let go. The human fought with a fury the mother had never seen. Each strike was precise, each move heavy with rage. This was no merchant's guard, no simple buyer. This was a soldier who had returned to war, but there were too many. For every hunter that fell, more rushed forward. The house shook with violence. The walls cracked. The human grabbed the mother's arm, his voice sharp. "We cannot stay." He dragged them through the back door, into the night, into the maze of the city. The streets blazed with danger. Hunters followed, their boots loud on the stone, their voices cruel. "Catch them! Take the boy alive!" The mother's legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she ran. The child clung to her, whispering, "Mother, I'm scared." She kissed his hair even as tears blurred her vision. "Hold on, my love, hold on." The human led them through alleys, across bridges, through dark tunnels. He knew the city like a map drawn on his soul. Every turn, every step, was a fight against time. Blasts struck walls behind them, dust fell, metal burned, but still they ran. At last they reached the edge of the city, a broken shipyard stretched before them, old vessels rusting under dead lights. The human pointed to one, a freighter scarred by age, its hull cracked. "That one," he said. The mother gasped. "It cannot fly." "It will," he answered, and his eyes burned with certainty. They climb. Inside, the hunters close behind, their shouts echoing through the night. The human threw switches, slammed controls, his hands moving like a man who had done this 1,000 times. The ship groaned, its engines coughed, but sparks of life flickered. "Sit down, hold tight," he ordered. The mother obeyed, clutching her child, her heart racing. The hunters reached the ramp, firing. The ship shook under the blasts. But then, with a roar, the engines came alive. The freighter lifted, slow at first, then faster. The hunters leapt back as fire spilled from its thrusters. The ship rose into the sky, breaking free from the city's grip. The mother stared out the window, her chest heaving, tears on her face. They were leaving the ground, leaving the hunters, leaving the prison of the market. But safety was still far. The hunters had ships of their own. Engines screamed behind them as sleek vessels rose in pursuit. The freighter shook as blasts struck its shields, sparks flying inside the cockpit. The child cried out, covering his ears. The mother held him close, whispering, "We will live, we will live," though her own voice trembled. The human's eyes narrowed. He pulled the freighter hard to the left, dodging fire. The ship rattled like it would break apart, but he did not slow. His hands were steady, his breath calm. This was the man she had glimpsed in his nightmares. A soldier of skies. A fighter who knew no fear when others screamed. "Strap in," he shouted. The mother held the child tight, her body covering him. The freighter dived between asteroids, drifting like giants in the void. The hunters followed, their sleek ships slicing through space. Blasts lit the rocks. Explosions thundered in silence. The chase burned bright. The mother's heart pounded, each moment a knife. The child buried his face in her chest, his small voice soft. "Father will save us." The words struck her like lightning. She looked at her son, stunned, then at the human at the controls. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her child had spoken what she feared and wished at the same time. "Father." The human did not turn, but she saw his hands tighten on the wheel. For a moment his mask cracked. For a moment she saw pain, sorrow, and something deeper, love. But there was no time to speak, no time to feel. The hunters were still there, still firing, still chasing. The human pulled the freighter toward a massive asteroid field. The mother gasped, "We will be crushed." His eyes glinted. "They will not follow." He pushed the engines harder. The ship roared. Metal screamed as they sliced between rocks, dust and fire trailing behind them. The hunters tried to keep up, but one by one their ships collided with stone, burning into sparks. The void swallowed their screams. Silence returned. The freighter drifted, battered but alive. The mother exhaled, her arms still around her child, tears rolling freely. The human leaned back, sweat on his brow, his body heavy with exhaustion, but his eyes were steady, focused on the stars ahead. The child lifted his head, his small eyes shining. "Father," he whispered again, soft but certain. The mother's chest tightened, her lips trembling. The human said nothing, but his silence carried more weight than words. Outside, the stars stretched endless, cold and bright. They had escaped the city, escaped the hunters for now. But whispers followed them still. The galaxy would not forget. The hunt had only just begun, and their flight through the stars was far from over. The freighter drifted through the dark, the engines hummed low, the stars stretched endless, but silence carried danger. The human kept his hands on the controls, his eyes never leaving the black horizon. The mother sat with her child, her body wrapped around him like armor. For the first time in days, she dared to breathe slowly, but her heart still whispered of hunters. Food was low, fuel was less, and hope was fragile. The freighter could not run forever. They need a place to hide, a place to rest, a place where hunters could not follow. The human knew it, the mother knew it, but neither spoke. Only the child slept with peace, unaware of the weight pressing down on the two who protected him. After 2 days of drifting, they found a signal, a small outpost hidden on the edge of a barren moon. Its lights flickered weakly, its towers bent with age, but it was alive. The human guided the freighter down, the ship shaking as it touched the cracked landing pad. The mother held her breath, her arms around her child. Every landing now felt like walking into the unknown. Waiting at the airlock was a man with a scar across his face. He smiled as the hatch opened, his voice rough but warm. "Old friend," he said to the human. The human stiffened, but then gave a slow nod. "Ren," he answered. The mother watched with narrowed eyes. This man, Ren, seemed to know the human well. They clasped forearms, a soldier's greeting. "You look worse than the war left you," Ren said with a grin. The human replied, "And you look exactly the same, trouble on two legs." They both laughed, but the mother did not. Inside, the outpost smelled of metal and smoke. Tables were scattered, weapons rested on racks, machines hummed in corners. Ren guided them to a room with food and heat. The child's eyes lit up as he tasted warm broth. The mother stroked his hair, whispering thanks under her breath. For a brief moment it felt safe, but the mother's heart did not trust. Ren's eyes lingered too long on the child, his smile too sharp. She clutched her son closer, her instincts screaming. The human noticed but said nothing. He trusted Ren, and that made her fear grow heavier. That night, as the child slept, the mother whispered to the human, "Your friend. He looks at my child as if he knows." The human's brow furrowed, his voice low. "He fought beside me. He saved my life once. He is no enemy." Her lips trembled, her eyes burning. "No enemy? Or the worst kind of enemy, the one you let inside?" The human's silence was heavy, but he turned away. Trust was a wound between them, and it was tearing wider. The next day, the betrayal came. The mother awoke to the sound of boots, the clank of weapons, the whisper of voices outside the door. She rose quickly, clutching her child, her heart hammering. The door opened, and Ren stood there, not with a smile, but with hunters at his side. The same hunters who had stormed the house, the same hunters who wanted her child. The mother's scream filled the room. She backed against the wall, shielding her son. The human burst in, his blade drawn, his eyes blazing. "Ren!" he roared, his voice shaking with rage. Ren smirked, his scar twisting. "Forgive me, old friend, but the galaxy pays more for the boy than loyalty ever could." The hunters rushed forward. The human fought with fire, his blade flashing, his fists breaking steel. But there were too many. Blasts filled the room. Smoke choked the air. The mother's cries echoed. The child screamed as rough hands tore him from her arms. "No, no," she cried, clawing, kicking, her nails breaking against armored skin. But the hunters dragged him away. The human fought like a beast, blood pouring from wounds, his voice raw. "Give him back." Ren laughed, his voice cold as ice. "You still fight for children you cannot save." The words struck deep, twisting the blade of guilt in the human soul. The mother fell to her knees, her arms empty, her chest breaking. Her child's voice echoed down the halls. "Mother! Father!" The hunters vanished into the ship bay, the sound of engines screaming. The human staggered after them, but Ren struck him from behind, a brutal blow that sent him to the floor. Blood spreading, the world blurred, the lights faded, but his voice still broke through. "I will come for you," he swore, his hand pressing against the floor as if to rise again. Ren looked down at him, his eyes hard, his grin sharp. "You won't live long enough," he said, and turned away. The hunter's ship roared as it lifted into the stars, carrying the child, carrying hope. The mother crawled to the human, tears streaming down her face. "You promised," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human's hand trembled, his blood thick on the ground. His voice was a shadow but still strong. "I will not fail. Not again." The outpost fell silent, the hunters gone, the betrayal complete. The mother wept, her child stolen, her world broken. The human lay bleeding but alive, his promise burning brighter than his pain. In that moment, he was no longer only a soldier, no longer only a man haunted by ghosts. He was something else, a father by choice, and fathers do not stop, not until their children are safe. The human lay broken, blood ran across the metal floor, his body heavy, his vision fading. The mother knelt beside him, her hands trembling, her tears falling on his wounds. Her child's scream still echoed in her mind, carried away by the hunters, carried away by betrayal. Every breath was pain, every heartbeat a reminder of failure. But the human's eyes burned with fire. He forced himself to sit, his voice raw but unbroken. "I will not fail them," he whispered. The mother grabbed his arm, her voice sharp with desperation. "You cannot fight them all. You cannot face an empire alone." He looked at her, his gaze steady even through the blood. "I can, because I must." He rose, slow and unsteady, but his will stronger than steel. The mother followed, torn between fear and hope. Her child was out there, in chains again, his small hands reaching for her, his voice calling. She could not give up, not now, not ever. Ren's betrayal spread like fire. The hunters delivered the child to a fortress carved into stone. High walls, towers of guns, gates wrapped in shad. Owls there the merchants waited, their eyes full of greed, their hearts empty of mercy. The boy was caged, his small face pale, his tears silent. They spoke of selling his blood, of cutting his future into pieces, but the child's voice was steady even in fear. "My father will come," he whispered. And he did. The human walked into the fortress like a storm wrapped in flesh, his blade in one hand, his scars burning in the dark. The guards laughed at first, then screamed. He cut through steel, he shattered walls. He fought not for gold, not for glory, but for love. The merchants shouted, "Stop him! Kill him!" But their weapons could not break his will. Their walls could not hold him. One man became an army. The mother followed close, her fear turned into fire. She carried no blade, but her hands were claws, her heart unbreakable. Together they fought, side by side, tearing through the empire that sought to own them. The child heard the echoes of battle and hope filled his small chest. "My father is here," he whispered again. At last the human reached the final chamber. Ren stood there, scarred and smiling, his blade drawn. The child was in a cage behind him, chains heavy on his wrists. The mother cried out, running forward, but the human raised his hand. "Stay back," he said. This was not her fight, this was his. Ren sneered, his voice sharp. "You were always a fool, fighting for the weak, fighting for nothing. You cannot save them all. You never could." The human's voice thundered back. "No, but I can save them." Their blades clashed, sparks flying, steel screaming. Two old warriors, one driven by greed, the other by love. The fight raged, long and brutal. Ren's strikes were heavy, cruel, filled with years of rage. But the human's every move carried weight, not of anger, but of promise. He bled, he stumbled, but he never fell. He fought for every child he had failed, every life lost, and for the one boy who called him father. At last, his blade so struck true, Ren fell, his eyes wide with shock, his grin broken. "You will die for nothing," he whispered with his final breath. The human answered, his voice calm and strong. "No, I will live for love." The cage shattered under his hands, the chains broke. The child ran into his arms, crying, "Father!" The human held him close, his blood staining the boy's small clothes, but his embrace unshakable. The mother fell to her knees, tears streaming, her voice breaking with joy. Her family was whole again. The merchants fled, the fortress burned. The galaxy whispered of the human who fought an empire not for power, not for wealth, but for love. The hunters who survived told the tale, their voices trembling. He was not a man, they said. He was a storm. Days later, aboard the freighter, silence filled the air. The child slept peacefully, his small hand clutching the human's sleeve. The mother sat beside him, her eyes soft, her voice gentle. "You bought me with one coin," she whispered. "But you gave me more than life. You gave me love." The human looked at her, tired but steady. "I bought no one," he said. "I chose." Her heart trembled, her eyes burning with tears. For the first time she believed she was no slave. Her child was no burden. They were family, bound not by chains, but by choice. The stars stretched endless before them, cold and wide. But inside that small ship burned something greater than any empire, hope. And so the tale of despair became the tale of love. A mother who sold herself to save her child, a human who chose not chains, but mercy, a boy who called him father, and a family that defied the galaxy. Together, they vanished into the stars, not as broken souls, but as one.